We remember the nearly 3,000 beautiful lives taken from us so cruelly. And we will never forget. We honor the courage of those who put themselves in harm's way.
I placed a phone call for my brother to get help.
The question before us, as always, is how do we preserve the legacy of those we lost? We have seen the answer in a generation of Americans. Our men and women in uniform, diplomats, and how do we keep their spirit alive in our own hearts? All who have stepped forward and who have risked and given their lives to keep us safe.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Happy Friday. It is a day of remembrance and also a day to kind of keep pushing forward. So without any further ado or fanfare, we're just going to get right into some goodness. Right, Rob?
Indeed, we are. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Aaron. I would have typed that to you, but I am sharing my screen, so I didn't want to do that. So today I just wanted to share this quick thing, which honestly I didn't know about, but I'm also very out of the loop because I don't have TV or anything, so I don't know what's going on in the world. But that was put together as a nonprofit to basically turn it as a day of obviously remembrance, but also to kind of lessen the fact that it's a day of tragedy and of mourning. They wanted to actually turn this into something good so that 9/11 moving forward is going to be an awesome day where people do remember the horrible things that happened, but also contribute to good in the world. So they put together 11 good deeds that you can take part of from any place, whether you're at home or wherever else. They got some great celebrities to talk to.
Thank you.
Are talking about one of these different initiatives. And down here, you'll see that we have a whole bunch of different things that you can take action on. So feeding a first responder, telling Congress to pass a bill to create a national 3-digit code for suicide prevention. This is a cool one, diversify your children's books. So texting diversity to 39015 will give you a list of books that are curated by Black authors, which is a great thing. Whole bunch of different stuff for if you happen to be young and healthy, you can volunteer as one of the polling staff on voting day, which is great. And if you are not, then they have things to help you request a mail-in ballot as well. Talking about saving local restaurants, etc. There's a whole bunch of different really cool things, and they also have a bunch more. These are just 11 of like the top ones. But it's a really cool thing to kind of look through, and I think it kind of gives everybody a good idea of something that they can just do today to make themselves feel better about the world right now. So,
And we could all use a little bit of that, if we're being honest. So
absolutely.
That's awesome, man. I definitely I'm going to check some more of that out later, besides just the Morgan Freeman.
Indeed.
And healthy, too. That's right, Aaron. All right, I think we're flipping it to Jeff.
Sure are. Okay, you can all see this, right?
Yes, and now we can see you. That's great.
Sweet. So much more somber than Rob's website, but I was just thinking back to 2001, this date, and where I was, and kind of like the tone and the messaging that I received. I was in end of my middle school career at this point, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? I didn't even know what the World Trade Center was, or like what those towers stood for. So this is a very technologically unimpressive website, but it's just like it's a simple side scroll with a little bit of parallax action, but it outlines a lot of the key timestamps. It's just a timeline of September 11th attack. There's a timeline for ground zero recovery and for the 93 bombing. And this is right on 9/11memorial.org. Just a lot of good information. I read this entire thing, looked at all the, what are these called? Seating charts and stuff
Wow.
of the flights, and just a lot of interesting stuff
Yeah.
that you don't get to see. Like this is them
Yeah,
going
like
through
it puts it
security.
in context.
Right? You never think this is 5:45 in the morning. So it's just, again, technologically very unimpressive, but it's a cool. I don't use that word like I should use that word. It's a very
It's
meaningful.
Yeah, it's also very
read.
forensic in nature, which I think is cool. I think, and if you're just if you want the absolute chronology of what happened, there's a way to understand that. And to your point, man, like I think we probably everybody in our generation, and probably any generation, but for us, like that was such a pivotal moment. Like I think everybody, even when we were kids, like remembers exactly where they were or what was going on when that happened. I
in the gym locker room at my middle school.
I was in the AV club. Surprise, go figure. And as soon as we found out, my school, we quickly had the AV club basically set up a live feed into the auditorium of the news, and then basically everybody just in the school basically piled into the auditorium and just sat there and just watched. And it was just, I'll never forget it. I always think about it this time of year. So I think the chronology of it is really fascinating, and I'm sure would love to know in the comments if you guys remember anything specific about where you were or what you were doing. I think that's an interesting way people.
I remember thinking that it was here because I was in college and I just like woke up because my roommate was like, dude, did you see this? And all I saw was like smoke in a city on the TV, and I thought that something happened in Rochester, and I like freaked out for a second because my mom was working downtown, and then he was like, no, this is New York. And I was like, wait, what happened? It was surreal. It felt like a dream because I had just woken up. It was so odd.
And yet, ironically, that's kind of how it feels today in the moment we're in right now. It feels like a fever dream. Feels like what's real, And I think having a memorial or a tribute to something like this, which is such a, it's such a shaking moment in our country's history. But if you think of, the actual lives lost, we're having almost that amount on a daily basis for months now. So there's there's a lot to unpack there, but I think the implementation, while it's brutal here, Jeff, of this site, I think it's really fascinating, and I can see how people could probably spend a lot of time. Calc class, Jess goes in calculus. Wow.
Yep. And then my other shares really don't seem to have a whole lot of weight today, so I just might not.
That's fair.
Might not even share
That's
those.
fair.
I'll share those
we
next
can
week.
move fast. Who's on deck? Did anybody claim a spot next? Was it you, Jake? I think. First grade. Oh.
Super topical is that, but I think I'll get there.
That's okay. It's not all doom and gloom. We're trying to also, find some other cool inspiration this morning. Yeah.
Piece of information. I've seen it floating around or in Twitter replies, but it's about the idea that if you see someone with a username, Andy Rose 1234567 you automatically assume that it's like a bot or a troll or an account that was just recently made to just try to spread disinformation or that not to take them seriously. But the point of this blog post is just to explain that since December 2017, in the Twitter sign-up process, they actually don't let you pick your own username. So they just say, what's your name? And they generate you a username based on what your name is with 8 random characters at the end. They never prompt you after that to even change your username. They just say, hey, sign up for Twitter, email, name, let's get going. So if you're not a tech-savvy user, if you've just joined to try to follow accounts, or you're just not a tech-savvy person, you don't care about your username, you're not going to really change it. You have to go into your own settings, look up how to do it yourself, and then find one that's available. So it is likely that many of these accounts that are getting dismissed are actually real
Aaron,
people
stop reporting
that just
them.
aren't tech-savvy.
Did you see Aaron says she spends part of her day reporting bots? You're reporting real people, Aaron.
Part of
Stop
each
it.
day reporting
Stop.
bots. if they're real bots, you go ahead and report them. So this is just kind of an interesting look into the flow of how you sign up for Twitter and what information that they capture. And then welcome to Twitter. You never picked your username. You may not even know that you have one or how important usernames are on Twitter. Maybe you think that it's just like, oh, here's my random URL, they picked me. And you don't really see the issue with that. So just something to keep in mind. And these are the types of things that, it's kind of important for us to know as we get more and more into, social media and trying to figure out who do we engage with, who do we take seriously, how do these platforms work if we're looking to leverage audiences on these platforms. And then also just as someone technical, it's interesting to see what an onboarding process was like. And I'm sure they had discussions on, do we include this in the flow? Do we not? I think it probably was included in the flow at one point. So just, interesting to look at from that perspective as well.
That is super fascinating. I actually love looking at onboarding stuff. I sign up for like apps and services all the time just to like check out their onboarding process. But if you do, Aaron, ever see a Twitter account with a GIF for an avatar, it is definitely not a bot, because that is like this, just even older. Like, you used to be able to have GIFs as your profile picture, but they stopped allowing that. So now people who have like legacy GIFs there won't change them, because then they would lose their ability to do a GIF as their profile picture.
It's either not a bot or a very old bot.
Or like, yeah, a super savvy bot that has figured out how to go undetected, and we should leave them be, because they've probably achieved sentience.
That's true. So my next share is also on Twitter, but it's not related to Twitter at all. This is a clip from a live stream of someone who draws pixel art. And
no, but I'm so happy. I love pixel art.
It's almost not related to this. And so during the live stream, she's explaining, she's drawing the graphics for a game. And she's basically explaining, what her process is. And then she kind of goes into it, and she's like, you know what, but sometimes if I have to erase stuff, it's really hard because of the anti-aliasing feature in the eraser, that it doesn't do it right. It's kind of like in a blended mode. I don't know if I can find it exactly in here, but she's basically going through like, yeah, this is like a really big issue for me as an artist. So basically she ends up coloring back over the pixels that she wants to erase with like a different color pencil tool. So she's just kind of saying this, and she's like, this is really frustrating. She's been a pixel artist for years, and someone in the comments was like, oh, have you tried changing the blend mode on the eraser to this? And you can watch her just spiral into this like emotional turmoil. Like, she's almost mad that it works, because for so long she's been having trouble. And then the reason I found this is because this was shared as like if you're a software developer or a UX designer, you need to watch this, because it was bad UX. So when you in Photoshop are selecting the brush pencil tool, right here in the selector, like on the tool selector, you can select what the mode is. You would expect that would happen as well when you select the eraser tool, but that's not the case. The eraser tool you just click on, and then there's a different drop down in a different section. So these are the options for the eraser tool. There's no pencil option. So there's just a whole different selector and a different section of the software to change that mode. So that's why she didn't find it. So as a user, you want to be able to change the same settings in the same places, and that's why she had that issue. So it was more of a UX
Absolutely.
thing than like
I was actually just thinking about that when I was making that intro video yesterday. Like, I don't use Photoshop nearly as much as I used to, right? Because like the things I do day to day are a little different than they used to be. And I realized like a couple months ago or whenever it was that they really overhauled, like it was probably longer than that, but when they overhauled the way all those menus worked for your tool selection, and it drives me nuts. It just feels so unintuitive, and it's like, how could Adobe of everybody like screw this up so badly? They had a pretty good precedent, then they started trying to add flyouts to like all these different tools, and like, how are you supposed to know which flyout has which tool? Like, it's poor UX. I'm really glad you shared this, but I want to see her reaction to it at the same time. Like, okay,
I'll share the link, but it's like, you just watch someone just like lose faith in like humanity. It's like funny and
I
sad
feel like that's what you guys
time.
as developers go through like on a daily basis.
It's like you spend 30 minutes trying to figure out what you did wrong, and you realize you just like misspelled a word, and it's awful. That's what we're billing our time to. And now, in true uh, fashion, as I will, I found this interesting piece of information. This is something that um, may be common knowledge, it may not be, but it's very topical. And so I was looking for a completely different statistic, and I found this on the Wikipedia article for police brutality in the United States post 9/11. Um, the war on terror, as we called it. This is as it created a generalized climate of impunity for law enforcement officers and contributed to the erosion of what few accountability and mechanisms exist for civilian control over law enforcement agencies. As a result, police brutality and abuse persist unabated and undeterred across the country. And this is from um, an extensive report prepared by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, published in 2006. So, this is super topical and something that, as Jeff mentioned, like we were kids when this happened. I remember sitting in elementary school and not really understanding what this means, not knowing really the weight of it when it happened. And so we kind of grew up with this kind of being
Yes.
normalized, and maybe, it takes being older to look back and understand like how some historical things have contributed to the world we live in, and what as a child made you feel safer and made a ton of sense. Now you look back and see, oh wow, there were a
Yeah.
lot of unintended
Well,
consequences
because
to
it
this
started
type
with
of thing.
TSA. Like that's where it started. Was well, first and foremost, we have to be strong, secure. Getting on our planes. And then from there,
Mhm.
it just you saw our police forces weren't militarized. We didn't have tanks. For a local police department before 9/11. So I mean, it is crazy to realize if you actually add up all the pieces. Like the the Department of Homeland Security didn't exist until post 9/11. So we ushered in a whole new era of government, and of militaristic might, to overexert and overstretch into our local, communities. And who's to say? I mean, I think we're seeing now the result of that. You know.
Yeah. So, to bring it back around, I'm
Yes.
not sure if I've shared this before, but always worth sharing again. This is an article in the Huffington Post that I found about should I call 911, and it's a series of articles that they have. And I was actually more interested in this from like a UX development perspective. So this whole thing right up top, this is just an animated GIF that's looping. That's easy. You can just put an image at the top of any web page, and if you give it a quick scroll through, you'll see it's just paragraphs and these like reusable sections. That's all it is. So all someone had to do is make one of these types of sections and stylize these paragraphs, and that's it. And it's really reusable. And as you're reading through, the histories and whether you should call police, they have these little, they almost look like banners, but they're related to the article. Should I call the police for a noise complaint? Should I call the police if I see a homeless person? And these all link out to many other articles that they have in this series that are done in the same style, that have the same reusable section. But my favorite part of this is there are a few, if you scroll down, there are some black men waiting at Starbucks. Should I call the police? And then you hover over it. It says no, but
Yeah.
this did happen, and they link out to the article about that. So there's a few of those peppered in as well. Should I call 911 on people having a cookout in the park? No, but
Yeah.
this did happen. And a lot of these have some really interesting pieces of information on it. So here, should I call the police if I see someone having a mental health crisis? And they explain, how that may or may not hurt someone. If you don't have a full picture of someone's condition, it could make the situation worse, especially if they're black or brown. But some of these, obviously, you should call the police, and they're
I was gonna say
upfront
I
with
hope
that.
some of
If
them
your
are yes,
house
because I feel like
like
yeah,
burgled, like yeah, you should probably
right,
call the police. So it's not just like an
right,
anti-police propaganda piece. It's real information. But as a developer, I really appreciated that it was impactful, but it wasn't a heavy lift, and a
right.
lot of this was thought out holistically in terms of how we're going to roll out this series. What reusable pieces of design and development can we use to really make a difference? And so that's the types of things that we look to do with the work that we're
Right.
doing as well. bringing
There
it
you
all
go.
back together. So those are my
Nice.
shares today.
Dig it. Cool. Thank you much, Jake. We're gonna flip it over now. I think Debo, you want to kind of share that cool thing you had? If you're still there, is he still there?
Sure thing.
There he is. All right.
Am I here?
Yeah, I can hear
Am I
you.
good? Okay.
Very cool. Thank you, David. It seems like we maybe lost audio for you for a minute there, but basically, if you guys couldn't tell, what the ride up was basically going up through the years, and kind of seeing the tower get built up, and then going back down is zooming out, kind of around New York City and around the towers. Very cool. Was there any other shares, Debo, or are we gonna flip it over to? Oh wait, we might be done. No, Phil, you had one, right? Yes, Jeff. It's very much a Wonka Vader. All right, Phil. Why don't you see if we can hear you with your share here? We can hear you in the in the chat, but yeah, it is. Very cool. Thank you for sharing, Phil. Sorry about the audio issues. It's just Phil overload, you know, when we have so much awesomeness, especially from starting with David and then going into Phil. You know, there's just two UX designers. The audio can't handle it. You know, there's just too much cool stuff to be considering. This is not nearly as soothing as Phil's voice. Very true, Jake. Very true. But appreciate you guys hanging out with us for a share. Appreciate you know, starting your morning off with us this special Friday as well. Is there anything else we wanted to touch on, guys, or is that pretty much it for today? I think that's it. Cool. Right on. Yes, that's right. Subscribe. We're officially over 100, so we can be youtube.com/partners. Thank you, Sarah Collins, who specifically was the 100th subscriber, but now we're over that. Cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate you. Check you next week. Have a good weekend.
We remember the nearly 3,000 beautiful lives taken from us so cruelly. And we will never forget. We honor the courage of those who put themselves in harm's way.
I placed a phone call for my brother to get help.
The question before us, as always, is how do we preserve the legacy of those we lost? We have seen the answer in a generation of Americans. Our men and women in uniform, diplomats, and how do we keep their spirit alive in our own hearts? All who have stepped forward and who have risked and given their lives to keep us safe.